Hey there, tubers and plant lovers. It's Justin coming to you from the Big Blue Nation once again. And today I was going to talk to you about Ananas comosus. Kind of sounds like a spell, doesn't it? Something that would make your bananas walk. I'm not sure, but it's the name of the pineapple plant. And I had a request for this plant by one of my viewers. So I wanted to go ahead and address this plant and kind of explain how I was able to cut the top of a pineapple plant off and make an existing plant. And as you can tell, I've had some pretty good luck with this plant. It is huge. It's probably one of the biggest plants that I do have. So what I want to do right now, this plant has sat outside all summer, spring, and part of the fall. These plants are tropical and they love the sun. So I've had this guy out all summer long. Now I just want to go ahead and trim up some of the dead areas on here, and I'm doing that with a completely sterilized set of pruning shears. So any deadness or dying area you see, you just want to kind of cut that off. And anything that's way too big for your pruning shears, you can kind of fold in half and just cut it right there. Now this helps the plant tremendously because the plant no longer has to waste precious energy and nutrients by keeping up with dead leaves. Now just because they are mostly dead doesn't mean that they won't extract any energy or nutrients that the rest of the plant needs. And I'm also just kind of checking the plant to make sure that there isn't any kind of bugs or any kind of webs or any leaves. Anything that I really just don't want in a house, I'm going to remove that as well. Now, as I was saying, you want to make sure that your pruning shears are completely sterilized. You're able to pass diseases and pathogens between different plants. So anytime you cut on one plant, you want to make sure you sanitize with soap and water, hot soap and water, or maybe alcohol before you use it on another plant. Now, the pineapple plant is part of the bromeliad family, and I don't know if you know this, but bromeliads can be rather pricey, but you can actually have a very healthy bromeliad plant just by cutting off the top of a pineapple plant and paying it for next to nothing that way. It is rather cheap and easy to do, and these plants can last a really long time. They're really healthy and they're not very picky at all. In fact, you can really kind of remember how to care for a pineapple plant just by remembering the Alata rule, and that is these plants like a lot of sun, a lot of warmth, a lot of water, and a lot of fertilizer. Anytime these plants are in any kind of growing season, they need to be outside in full sun. And when I say full sun, I mean at least 8 hours of sunlight a day. Especially if you're trying to get a pineapple out of your plants, you definitely want it to be in the full sun, because it's going to need a lot of energy to actually produce this pineapple. And actually, when they do produce a pineapple fruit, they only send up one flower stalk and consequently only produce one pineapple fruit per plant. So you want to make sure that everything is done right so that this plant does actually produce a pineapple fruit. And as I was saying, they like a lot of sun, so just make sure it's in the sunlight all day. They like a lot of water. So you want to make sure that they do get a good amount of water. They are tropical plants, so they can take this. And with their soil, you want to make sure that they do have a little bit of sphagnum peat moss in there. Not a lot, but some sphagnum peat moss to actually hold on to some moisture. And the rest, you just kind of want to make it potting soil and sand. This sand will actually enable any excess water that the plant doesn't need, a way to actually drain out and away from the plant, so that it's not sitting there in completely saturated soil and developing root rot, because these plants do not like to be in standing water a lot. They like a lot of warmth. So if this plant is not during the growing season, then you want to bring the plant indoors, particularly if you have a pretty harsh winter. And when you bring the plant indoors, you do want to set it in a south-facing window so it can go ahead and receive the maximum amount of light in a day that is possible. And they do need a lot of fertilizer. So now you do need to make sure that during the growing season, you're feeding this plant about once every week. Pineapples are foliage plants, so they will use a lot of nitrogen. They'll eat nitrogen up. And you can use any kind of fertilizer that does have a lot of nitrogen in it. As I was saying, they are foliage plants, and foliage plants, by consequence, do use a lot of nitrogen. Now, when you go to select a pineapple plant that you're wanting to remove the crown from, what you need to do is make sure that you have a plant that has a well-endowed crown. You're going to want to make sure that there isn't a lot of broken leaves on there, and you're going to want to make sure that the crown is rather pronounced. And go ahead and check on the inside of the crown, make sure that you don't see any kind of bugs or any kind of pests or any kind of cocoons or webs or anything like that. And make sure you don't see a lot of discoloration either. You want to see green without a lot of brown or any other color. And then after you've selected your plant, you can go ahead and bring it home. And then what you're going to do is you're going to remove about the top inch of the pineapple plant away from the crown. And then you're going to kind of whittle away the fibrous kind of core, because any kind of flesh left on there can actually rot and kill the plant. So after you've gotten that down to kind of a cylindrical, kind of hollow core, you're able to set it down for several days, maybe about 3 or 4, 5, until you have it completely calloused. And once that's kind of dried out and calloused over, you can go ahead and plant it in some compost in about a 5-inch pot, and then water it, and you will be able to start growing roots on your plant. And as I've said before, you can kind of start tugging on your plant after a couple of weeks, and if your plant just comes flying out of there, it hasn't developed any roots. But if your plant kind of holds a little bit, it started developing roots, and your plant will be just fine. Now, a fully mature pineapple will take at least 2 years before it's able to produce a pineapple fruit. So whenever you're getting all that together, you want to make sure you follow your instructions right and make sure you care for the plant pretty meticulously, because you will only get 1 flower stalk and 1 fruit. And it takes at least 2 years for the plant to produce a fruit. Now, one way to kind of trick your pineapple plants, if you've had yours plant for several years and you don't notice any kind of flower stalk or fruiting, you can actually take regular apples, any kind of apples that you want, and peel them. And take the peel that you have and place it kind of underneath your plant on the soil and leave it there for a while. And as the peel breaks down and decomposes, it'll release ethylene gas. And ethylene gas will actually kind of trick the plant into producing a flower stalk and a fruit. Now, it takes about 6 months for this to happen after you've placed the apple peels underneath your plant. About 6 months later, you'll notice that you're getting a flower stalk up onto your plant. And this works just kind of by the ethylene gas. And in fact, this is where we get the saying that one bad apple will spoil the bunch, because of that ethylene gas that's released. Well guys, that's really all I have to say about Ananas comosus, the pineapple plant. These plants are bromeliads, and they're plants of steel. They're almost impossible to kill. And as I was saying earlier, bromeliads are a little bit expensive, but the pineapple plant is part of the bromeliad family, and if you'd like one for next to nothing, you can just remove it and go about your business. These plants do take off relatively fast, and they will produce a pineapple after a while. So just go ahead and leave me a like, hit the subscribe button if you don't mind, and hit the bell next to it. That way you'll know anytime I've uploaded a video. And let me know if you guys have had any kind of luck with these plants, and if you've gotten yours to fruit or flower. Well guys, you all have a good one. Take it easy, and don't forget, always plant prudently. Later, YouTube.